Welcome to the week 4 go-to session. This is the final of 4 sessions we're holding this month. Thanks to those in attendance. For those people who are going to be watching this after the fact, this will probably be a shorter session. I really only have wrap-up things to go over, particularly the things we have to work on in week 4. I do have to make an announcement. I'm also an announcement in this lecture. I'm also going to send out an announcement. I might actually send it also as a personal message to make sure that people see it. If you haven't noticed already, the essay due date has been extended to Wednesday. There are a couple of reasons for this, because the hurricane interrupted things. Also, it took me probably an extra day to get through grading. So if that results in you having fewer days to read my feedback and apply it, then it's up to me to give you guys a few extra days. It's probably going to set us a little bit off course for the rest of the month, but students are usually pretty okay with extensions. I don't really get too many complaints about them. It makes things a little bit chaotic, and I do apologize for that, so I don't want to treat it lightly. We'll make it through, okay? I'm aware that it's been a crazy month with Labor Day interrupting 1 week, and then the hurricane closing the university for an entire week. It's kind of been one of those months, but we'll get through. Okay, so I'm aware of that, and I understand my need to be flexible. To repeat, essay drafts due Wednesday because everybody's gotten their feedback on their outlines. So now you can use that feedback to appropriately apply it to the essay draft. Right, and just the last week's video. Remember, I just posted the video from the month before because that was the easiest thing to do, given the fact that I was working from home, and probably there might not have been that many people in attendance. I know not everybody is a campus student, not everybody was affected by the hurricane, but I think large numbers of people knew that the university was closed, and who knows, maybe I wouldn't have had the greatest turnout for that session. Plus the videos, they don't change month to month. I like to hold them anew because I think it's more interesting to deliver the material live and actually answer questions from the specific students I have that month. In a pinch due to an emergency, I can always post a video from the previous month. But remember, in that video, I mentioned that the essay draft is not a draft in the typical sense. It's not a rough draft. It should be your finest work. It should be your most polished effort. Again, this class moves fast, so we don't have 16 weeks to work on revisions. The turnaround is always pretty quick. It's important that your essay is in the finest shape it can possibly be in, so that revision doesn't become this huge, monstrous project, okay? Let's see. Anything else important to note? I'll just discuss it in passing, okay? Here's our presentation for the week. As you can see in this title slide, there are two big things to focus on in week 4. Peer review. This is handled completely through turnitin.com. And revising your essay. So you'll hand in your paper, you'll get feedback, and I'll probably be extending the date of the revision as well, because I doubt if it's due on Wednesday, I would have to work like grease lightning to get it to you by, let's say, Friday, but that would only give you 2 days to revise before the Sunday due date. So just assume that dates could be extended to, okay? Peer review and a revision of your essay draft that you're handing in if you haven't handed it in already. And Nicholas, if you have any questions at any time, just go ahead and ask them in the chat, okay? And I'll be sure to answer them. Let's begin with peer review. Actually, let's begin with the actual slides in this lecture. Okay, so welcome to week 4. Yay, we're almost at the end, right? It's been a crazy month. It's been a little bit chaotic with the many surprises, but we're almost at the finish line. Okay, we can see the end in sight. This class really is amazing in the sense that it moves fast, it's over before you know it, and that's great, but it also makes things kind of hectic. Even though we only work on a single paper, step by step, the entire month, there's still a lot on your plate. Probably you felt that way. But we're near the end, okay? So, and by the way, things slow down. Week 4 is not that intense. I'll explain how peer review, it does require, effort, but you should do well in peer review. There's no reason not to do well in peer review. I'm also going to send out announcements reminding people of peer review, because for some reason every month there are at least a handful of students who just forget to do it, and it's worth 10% of your grade. And yeah, you don't want to get a 0 on peer review because you forgot about it. Also, peer review is the only activity I cannot extend. Even if I wanted to, I can't. It's set up through turnitin.com, and when the activity is over, it's over. So there's no way for me to reopen it. There's no way for me to say, oh, okay, well, you can hand it in late for the 5 point per day penalty. No, when it ends, it ends. Okay, so it's important that we get peer review finished. Now, the good news is peer review is going to be extended as well. I have it set to expire on Friday, so you have this entire week to hand in your essay by Wednesday and then complete peer review by Friday. And you don't even have to have an essay submitted to begin peer review. Okay, I'm going to show peer review in a second through the turnitin.com website. Every student is going to have 2 papers distributed to her or him. Okay, and it's going to be your job to read those 2 essays and basically answer 4 prompts. I'll show what those prompts are a little bit later. That's about it. If you answer those prompts with thoughtfulness and care and specificity, basically showing me, well, not just showing me, but showing your peers primarily, that you have read their work carefully and that you are responding thoughtfully, you should be fine. The prompts do have a 100-word minimum. That sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. And yeah, if you can produce a thoughtful, at least 100-word response to each of those 4 prompts, indicating that you've read your 2 classmates' work with care, you should be fine. Okay, let's start talking about peer review. Here's yet another reminder that this class follows the structure of the writing process, right? So here's where we've been. Week 1 was brainstorming. Week 2 is the outline. Week 3, the essay draft. And week 4 is peer review and revision. Okay, these are the steps that most people go through, not just when writing essays, but creating anything, coming up with ideas, sketching out those ideas, taking a first stab at it, and then fixing it, polishing it, often because you're getting feedback from other people on your work. Okay. Okay, so we talked about the writing process. And I just want to make a quick reminder that you guys have really been terrific this month. I'm honestly thankful for your patience and your understanding. I haven't had students panicking or complaining or saying, what's going on? I know the hurricane came, but, things have been a little bit too chaotic. No, you guys have been great and have been hardworking and patient and have shown incredible perseverance. We know what that word means, right? Perseverance. When despite obstacles, despite barriers or challenges, you keep working to overcome those barriers. Your studies at Full Sail are an example of perseverance. So is your participation and your hard work in this class. So thank you for that. I'm going to fly through this slide because you guys are probably sick of seeing this image, right? What is this? 5 sides, so a pentagon showing the writing process. And let's talk about peer review. What peer review is really all about is it's a sort of litmus test to see how effectively you have communicated your ideas. Already on the outlines, I did write to several people, something that I mentioned in the week 2 lecture. You might remember that I encourage people to read their work from the perspective of someone who is not you, to imagine that you're a stranger that you pulled off the street and read your own words from that stranger's perspective, because that will help you spot when you think ideas are clear, because they're clear in your head. After all, we all think that our ideas are clear. But we sometimes find out that they're not as clear when they're on the page. And remember in week 2, I gave that example of the difference between an essay that begins, in this ad, the guy is feeling really anxious on his first day at work. And then I have to be the mean instructor and say, what ad? What guy? Right? Because that wouldn't make sense to the general reader. The general reader is someone who is not familiar with this class, this assignment, your chosen ad, and that you have to do some sort of hand-holding. And this is common in all writing, that you think about the reader. And you come to realize that the ideas that are clear in your head may not be clear on the page. I create those sorts of moments too, those accidental moments where I'm not 100% clear, but I usually spot them when I read over my work. Okay, and peer review just adds more people to that process. Okay, you're going to have 2 people who are essentially going to be looking at your paper with a fresh set of eyes. That's another way that peer review is helpful. If you've ever worked on a project long enough that you can't see things straight, right? You've been staring at the screen for hours. The words just start to look like a jumbled mess. Ideally, of course, if you have time to do, let's say you finish things a little bit early and can take the night off, get some sleep, and then wake up the next morning and read it anew, you can catch things. But yeah, it's helpful when you have other people helping out as well. So that's part of the value of peer review. We're going to see how effectively you've communicated your ideas. And that, yeah, this is the initial step toward feedback that can help you improve your work while also helping improving your peers' work at the same time. Okay. But yeah, I really want to stress that idea that that's what peer review is all about. It's getting a fresh set of eyes. It's turning to others to help spot things that maybe you can't see. And as a result, you actually learn a lot about writing. So how do you benefit specifically when you receive feedback? And you're all going to receive feedback from, hopefully, 2 of your peers. Some of these are pretty obvious. You're going to discover what's working well in your writing, and you're going to learn where your writing needs to improve. You're going to get that objective point of view on your work that I was just talking about, as well as identifying mistakes you can't see. And I'm not just talking about grammar errors. The comma should be here, not there. Or this is a contraction and you need an apostrophe. No, also like bigger picture things. Like this sentence isn't clear to me. Or the organization feels off in this paragraph. Additionally, you're going to improve in those areas you struggle with. This is a big one, learning to accept constructive criticism. Peer review is really a painless process, so if anybody's feeling stressed out by it, don't be. I think in the past, when we didn't have specific prompts that students needed to answer, there was some fear, well, what if my classmate is just too cruel or too harsh? But that won't happen. The prompts are written in such a way that, yeah, nobody's going to go off the deep end and be especially cruel. Or actually, I kind of have to do the opposite sometimes. I have to sort of light a fire under students to get them to open up and make critical in the sense of offering critiques, not critical in terms of being harsh. But yeah, to kind of kick them in the pants a little bit to get them to make those sorts of comments, because everybody wants to be too nice. Being nice is good, okay, but not if it comes at the expense of not offering any sort of critique at all. But again, the prompts guarantee that you'll be offering some of those sorts of comments. And of course, you get to apply the feedback that you'll receive to your own work. And with peer review, you always are in control, okay? So you're going to receive feedback from me. You'll receive feedback from at least 2 of your classmates, and you will have to be the one who decides what makes sense, what doesn't. You'll use what you find is helpful and ignore the rest. Don't just ignore things with a knee-jerk reaction. Don't just defiantly say, no, my essay's perfect, I don't need to change a thing. But sure, if you thoughtfully consider everything and you disagree with something, you don't have to follow it, even if it comes from me. Okay? I mean, yes, I think you should give extra consideration to what I've said, because I've been doing this writing thing for a while. In that sense, I'm like a coach. Okay? A coach is typically someone who's just been doing this a bit longer. And thus you kind of maybe have a bit more trust or confidence in what she or he has to say. But yeah, if you carefully think through things and disagree, you don't have to follow my advice. Just don't reject all of it. But it's not just the writer who gets a benefit. That might seem obvious, right? I'm getting feedback on my work. That's awesome. But you also get positives from giving feedback. And they're kind of the same sorts of things. You get to practice applying the writing and critical thinking skills you've learned. Okay, specifically by looking at a text, in this case, your 2 classmates' papers, it'll be distributed to you, and yeah, determining the quality of it. In what ways is it working well, and what ways does it need improvement? Just going through that process of carefully reading with that set of eyes. In that sense, you're kind of like the teacher, right? So the sorts of feedback I've been giving you, you'll be doing the same with your classmates. You won't be slapping a grade on it. You won't be suggesting to the student, hey, I would give this an A if I were the instructor. Don't do that. But you will, at the level of ideas, hopefully be doing something that's similar to what I do. You'll be remembering what we've talked about in the lectures. Based on the feedback I've given you, you might pass on some of that to the 2 papers that you read, the writers of those 2 papers. And additionally, yeah, the same things we kind of talked about in the previous slide. Learn to recognize what is working, what needs improvement. Because when you read another person's writing, it's almost like you're eavesdropping. by looking at other people's work, you also get to determine, yeah, what works well in writing, what doesn't. You might spot something in someone's writing that inspires you, or you might have had trouble in your essay, but then you see someone else's paper, maybe on an entirely different ad, but things click, and then you suddenly realize, oh, now I know what I have to do. That's the benefit of reading broadly. Okay, and you can read through the rest of these on your own. You prove your ability to recognize errors. You get to identify what you value in writing. That's a big one. And yeah, you continue to develop those critiquing and critical thinking skills. Okay, so yeah, peer review kind of packs a powerful wallop. It's an activity, but it's an activity that if you take it seriously should be extremely beneficial, both in getting feedback and giving. When we think about what we're concentrating though on, you'll again have 2 papers distributed to you. So what are you going to focus on? In general, the things you'll be focusing on can roughly fall into 2 broad categories. The first are global issues, sometimes called big picture issues. So in this case, global issues does not refer to global poverty or starvation, homelessness. No, global issues just mean big picture issues. So the big things that affect the paper as a whole, things like thesis, content development, organization. Okay, because yeah, if there are issues in any of these areas, those need to be addressed first. It makes no sense to fix individual words or proofread or focus on comma usage if, let's say, you don't have a thesis. Because you don't have a thesis, the rest of the paper is off the mark. No, that needs to be addressed first. So yeah, global issues come first, okay? And that should be the primary focus of your peer critiques, okay? Big picture issues. And these are issues that relate to revising or revision. You can look at the word here, right? It's got that word vision in it. So which means to do something again, to see something again, revise. Yeah, that revising that refers to big picture changes, okay? When we tackle revision, we're not just fixing individual word choice concerns or punctuation. No, we're fixing the paper as a whole. But of course, there is a second category, which are the smaller issues, local issues. And this is the smaller stuff. Excuse me. Grammar, mechanics, spelling, capitalization, etc. Okay? It's not that this stuff isn't important. It's just that it's secondary. Again, why fix individual grammar things if maybe that entire paragraph needs to be rewritten or rethought or reordered? Okay? So global issues come first. Not just when you're responding to your classmates' papers, but even when you sit down to revise. Those big picture issues should come first, and then focus on the smaller stuff. Okay? Another concern when people focus too much on local issues is that it can seem kind of attractive, because the big picture stuff, yeah, that is a little bit tougher. I don't think it's that difficult, but it does require you to maybe read the paper, think about it, read it again, think about it, and then come to some firm conclusions about advice you want to give. Local issues, though, sometimes those are attractive because it seems easier. Oh, I see a misspelling, and you point it out. Or, oh, I remember from another class, that's not where the comma goes, and you point that out. But if that's all you do, that may not be helping the writer tremendously. Okay, that writer fixes that one spelling error, that one comma issue. But is that improving the paper as a whole? Not really. But for some, not many, but for some, that can be very appealing and attractive to focus only on the minutia of spotting a spelling error, say. But the good news is, again, because you're answering these very 4 specific prompts, you shouldn't be running into this issue anyway, okay? And let's see, should I go over to turnitin.com? Oh, and these local issues, these are examples of editing. So revision means focusing on the big things. Editing is when you focus on that smaller stuff. Okay, so peer review is set up. The prompts are not just random prompts. They're actually following a system where some people who are much smarter than I am developed a system for giving meaningful feedback. And it's called the RISE model. I'm going to breeze through this kind of because I don't know. I don't think students always find this the most thrilling information possible. So I'll kind of just explain the gist of it. And then we'll look at the 4 prompts, okay? Because the 4 prompts, it used to be that the students would just write a critique on their own with no prompts to answer. And we had encouraged them to follow the RISE model, but rarely did they do it. And yeah, now that the prompts are already following the RISE model, you'll be following this process without even realizing it. But RISE is an acronym. The 4 letters in the word refer to reflect, inquire, suggest, and elevate. And basically, we're kind of beginning broad and becoming more narrow in our feedback. So the R refers to reflection, okay? Which, yes, as the slide says, refers to recalling, pondering, and communicating. Another way to put this is reflect is kind of the first order in responding. You read it, you think about it, you make comments based on your kind of initial impression. Okay, you've read it, you reflected. This is what I have to say upon reflection. And here you have some examples of what those statements would look like. I like what you did here because I relate, or I don't agree when you said this because, okay, so kind of more, not gut level because it's coming from a place of thoughtfulness, but yes, they're kind of immediate reactions. But then we go one step deeper and we start to inquire, okay? And this means, yeah, digging deeper and seeking information, specifically through asking questions. That's a good technique in general, by the way, to ask questions in your feedback. I should do it more because instead of telling your classmates something directly, you're asking them a question, and not just generically asking a question, but truly, yeah, kind of getting them halfway there. So have you considered looking at X from Y perspective? Or when you said X, do I understand you to mean? And of course, the writer has to consider those questions. Okay, like the second one here, when you said X, am I understanding you to mean? That's a question about clarity. Okay, when you said this, am I understanding you correctly? I think it means this, but am I right about that? And of course, only the writer can answer that. And if the writer comes to realize that, oh, I need to improve the wording, or no, the reader is getting the wrong impression, then that needs to be fixed. Nicholas says, I knew this sounded familiar about the RISE model. I used it in creative presentation class. Yes, creative presentation is the first class where you're introduced to the RISE model. And because I also teach creative presentation, I haven't taught it in a year, but for 3 years straight, I would teach it for several months. I'm specifically familiar with the RISE model in that class. And the next is suggest, which is, again, we're going one step deeper. We're going, our comments are becoming narrower, okay, but in a good way. This is where we specifically introduce ideas for improvement. Okay, so we've reflected, we've asked questions. Now we just, make firm suggestions. You might consider tweaking this, or you need support here, right? Or your topic shift mid-paragraph. You start off talking about the ad's use of music, and then halfway through, you switch to a different topic. Okay, you might want to make sure that those occur in separate paragraphs. Or if this new topic that you're talking about is never mentioned in your thesis, maybe you should consider removing it from the paper. Okay, so we're making firm suggestions. And finally, the most specific of all is elevation. So we're kind of ending on a final note that raises the conversation to the highest degree possible. Usually looking toward the future or finished piece as a whole. Okay. It's suggesting, but at the highest form possible. And here are some examples of that. Perhaps you can expand this in X capacity to further address Y. And I know this XY stuff makes it even more abstract. But yeah, it's the highest form of suggestion, okay, with the goal of producing a solid and finished draft. Let's switch to turnitin.com real quickly, because I do want to show the prompts. Okay. Oh, actually, I'm already there. So, although I should. So here we go. Peer review. Here it is. Do I have that date set correctly? Do the 22nd. What day is today? The 18th. 8, 19, 20, 20. Yeah, that's Friday. Okay, good. I have that set up quick. Now, let's see. How do I get in so I can see the prompts? I think just edit settings. If I keep clicking through here, I'll get to the prompts. Yeah. Okay, so here are the prompts. 4 of them. As you can see, it reminds you that the minimum answer length should be 100 words. And you have a little bar, and I'll show this in a screenshot that's included in the presentation slides. You have a little bar that indicates how close you are to 100 words. Okay, it's not that I'm obsessed with the word counts, but yeah, I can tell pretty quickly if it's well below 100 words. And 100 words isn't terribly long. Like if I were to copy and paste this wording here, all this, that would probably be close to 100 words. Maybe less, actually. That's a little bit short, but maybe twice that amount. So it's not that much writing. It sounds like a lot, but it isn't. And if you're answering these questions thoroughly, and as you can see, each prompt has kind of multiple questions, and they take you through the RISE model. So first, reflect, where state which advertisement was chosen by the writer of the paper that you're reading. What is that person's thesis statement as you see it? Okay, so literally provide the thesis statement. Can you see those 3 main points being discussed? Did the writer use some sort of hook, or did they, begin the paper in a somewhat interesting way? And finally, given the professional, intelligent audience, okay, because remember, this is, it's aimed at the general reader, but it's an educated general reader. Is the language too casual, or is it patronizing? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things to answer. So you should have no problem reaching 100 words, just because to answer the 4 or 5 questions that are contained in each prompt, you should easily get there. Okay, Eric has joined us. Eric, we've been going at it for about half an hour, so you'll probably have to watch the recording of the lecture to catch up on the stuff you've missed. And I'm not going to read all the prompts out loud, but this is what you're going to see. Okay. I mean, my recommendation is you're going to get 2 papers. Just begin with 1. You can read both of them if you want, but I think it makes more sense to deal with them one at a time so you don't get things mixed up. But whichever paper you choose, read it, and just read it. Think about it. Maybe you'll be able to answer some of these questions immediately, and if you feel you can do that thoughtfully and specifically, great. If not, either read it a second time, and actually you'll need this. I don't think it's possible to answer these questions without having the essay open somewhere so you can refer back to it. Often I can tell, again, people should be getting high assignments on this activity. Because again, if you're meeting the word length requirement and you're answering these questions specifically, you should be golden. Points get lost when things get answered generically. When I get an indication that I'm not sure the paper's been read with much care. And the answers lack that concreteness, that specificity, where it makes me question, was the essay read, or was just read once really quickly and the person just immediately dived into these questions without ever turning back to the essay? So you should have the essay open because you'll need it to answer all of these. Okay. Now let me show those screenshots I was talking about, because I think that's what's up next in the keynote presentation. Oops, we're going the wrong way. Oh no, this is the right way. If you're producing constructive feedback, in other words, good feedback, useful feedback for your peers, it should be meeting these qualifications, okay? It should be specific. So you're not just saying, I was confused in paragraph 3. No, what were you specifically confused by? Okay, just to say I was confused by paragraph 3, that might not help your classmate who might look at paragraph 3 and say, well, I don't know what he or she is talking about. Looks clear to me. Or, paragraph 2 felt disorganized. How? Where is it disorganized? What's the specific issue? Is it because it shifts topics halfway through? Is it because the information is all on topic, but it's just not maybe ordered in the best idea possible? Or does it feel disorganized because a quote is dropped in out of the blue without being set up? So be specific. Yes, you're trying to be helpful. Consider it. Okay, we have to remember there are real human beings on the other end. This isn't much of a problem anymore because the prompts are set up in such a way that nobody should be cruel. I think they're set up to lead to considerate answers. But be careful about being too nice or too timid. Only giving praise, not mentioning any concerns whatsoever. Most papers are going to have concerns. Okay. And that's something I noticed too. If someone's only giving praise or says, well, I don't see any problems, looks great to me. And then I think, well, that's kind of impossible because there are some fairly obvious things like the thesis isn't doing what a thesis statement should. Yeah, that will lead to a loss in points because I do expect obvious things like that to be noticed. On the other hand, yeah, don't be mean. And by the way, people are rarely intentionally mean. It's just because when you have face-to-face conversation, there are nonverbal cues, a smile, tone of voice that can help soften things. But when it's only words on a screen, the words can seem more intense than you perhaps intended. And I have to be careful with that because I have that issue sometimes. That's why I always qualify what I say. I might use softeners like I was a bit confused or I was a tad confused. I can't think of another word for confused. Right? You can use softeners or qualifiers. Or another thing I'll do is I'll just tell the student, listen, I have to be honest. I do have some very serious concerns, but I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be mean. I kind of, bend over backwards to tell the student that please don't take my words the wrong way. But yes, I have a very serious concern, and here it is. Because for me not to raise it at all, that would be, I'm not doing my job as an instructor. Point out what works and what needs improvement. Sometimes we can skip the first. Writers need to hear what's working well. And if it's a very, very rough paper, that probably shouldn't happen because I haven't seen any examples of that. But if in theory a really rough paper comes in, there's still things to praise. Maybe there are good ideas, like in the paper, 3 important aspects of the ad were pointed out. They maybe need to be discussed with more care or maybe with more organization in mind, but they're there. Or maybe the effort was tremendous. Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of concerns, but you can tell that the writer put in a lot of hard work. It's important to note those things because if not, then it just feels like a mountain of negatives and nothing positive. And the final, always speak to the writer about the piece of writing. This used to be, it's not an issue so much anymore. In the past, when students were creating critiques entirely on their own, they would sometimes get off topic. But now the prompts make sure that everybody stays on topic. Effective feedback takes time, so I cannot give you a ballpark figure of how long peer review should take. I would think that even if you can easily spot issues, or you're just an amazing reader, or things come easy to you in that specific essay, even if you're working like greased lightning, I cannot imagine a thoughtful critique. Even 30 minutes sounds too fast. 30 minutes to read, respond to all 4? No, I would think 45 minutes to an hour. And that's if you're working like greased lightning. Like you know what you want to say. You have to refer back to the essay to help you answer those prompts, but you're going back and forth. But you don't have to waste too much time thinking or you know what you want to say. 45 minutes probably is the fastest. So it's going to take time. The peer review. So make sure that you have space available. If you wait until Friday at close to midnight, that's when the shorter, more generic peer critiques come in. Okay. And remember what I said earlier. You don't have to have your essay submitted to do peer review. You might have to wait because the extension that I've given is till Wednesday. Everybody's papers may not be uploaded until Wednesday. So it might be a process that you'll begin Thursday. If you're lucky and you do have your 2 papers already distributed to you on Wednesday or on Tuesday, go for it. Start your peer review immediately. Okay, here's some screenshots to turn it in. So you'll see, this is what you'll see on your end. Okay, you'll see something that looks like this. The peer critique activity is this guy here, peer mark, and you simply have to click on the button to write reviews. Okay. And I believe this read reviews is for later. When you get your feedback, you can come in here, click read reviews, and you can read the feedback that was left for you. Once you click the write reviews button, you should see 2 essays to review. And you just have to click the get started button to start a review. Okay. It says, let me blow that up a little bit if I can. Oh, I can't. Click on a paper below to begin writing a review, it says. Don't know if you can see that so clearly on your end. Or you can go back into it later to view or edit a review. So yeah, it's not like you can come back to a paper. You can come back to a critique. You can start it, come back and finish it. Or maybe after you finish it, you feel like, oh no, there's more I wanted to say, or I want to change something that I've written. You can go back to it. And this is what you'll see. Okay, there are the prompts, and you're going to enter your response in these fields here. One caution I will give is that for some reason, I think it's because we're so used to, this is entirely online, the class, but this specific activity, it's not through Microsoft Word. There's no spell check or grammar check that you can click on, I don't think. And for some reason, because we're so used to Facebook and Twitter and online discussion boards and message boards, do not treat this activity like that. Okay, because I do see a higher percentage of not just grammar errors, which can occur anywhere, but specifically the types of things like not capitalizing a word that should obviously be capitalized, like the word Tuesday or a person's name. Okay, Maya Angelou narrates in the Apple ad. Words like apple need to be capitalized. Maya Angelou, the M and the A in her name need to be capitalized. And people know these basic rules. Even if you don't think you're the strongest writer in the world, people know basic rules about capitalization. And yet sometimes these rules, or excuse me, these rules get ignored because of the online nature. They start filling this in, and suddenly they get a little bit, students, not all students, but some, get too loose. Okay? Don't do that, because there is, I think, 20 points, 20% for grammar mechanics, or typing lowercase I, right? The little I with the dot for the pronoun I. I see that a lot, and it happens specifically on this assignment because, again, we're so used to ignoring those rules typically when we type online. This is not a typical online assignment. This is a professional activity, and it requires just like all writing in this class, it requires the commitment to the highest level of professionalism possible, okay? So, yeah. Don't lose points. Easy points. And here's that bar I was talking about. It shows you how close you are to reaching the 100 word minimum for each of the prompts. And here's your save button. And when you're completely happy, you've proofread, you can click submit, and then you're done with the review. Okay, and you get a reminder of the 100 word minimum here. So it's not like it's hidden. Okay, it's no secret. So that's peer review. The only other thing we have to talk about is revision. And I don't have too much to say here, except once you get feedback from me, your classmates, your final task worth 15% of your grade is to revise your paper. And I mean truly revise. Again, I'll almost certainly have to extend the revision date beyond Sunday. And that's the part I do feel a little bit bad about, because the early extensions don't really create problems, but when you're beginning a new class and you're still finishing up the old class, so I understand. And I will be a little bit forgiving with these things. But still, revision has to occur. And there's actually a penalty, a 20-point penalty for lack of meaningful revision, which means when you just hand in the same paper again. Or there are big picture issues to work on, but those haven't been touched. You've just fixed a couple spelling errors. Okay, that's not a revision. Obviously, if this is the activity that counts for the most in the class, worth 15% of your grade, why would we instructors give 15% of your grade to largely uploading the same file again? So if you're at all confused about this or expectations, you can reach out to me. Or if you feel overwhelmed, speak to me. I could give you specifics like, okay, well, at least can you address this one big picture issue? I'll let you maybe skip the others, but I do want to see you address the need for a clearer thesis. Or maybe when you were discussing this second of 3 points, that you're analyzing, there was an aspect of that that could have been improved. So reach out to me if you're at all concerned about that. But yes, revision has to occur. And revision means big picture issues. So anything that needs to be fixed in terms of thesis, content, organization, and the smaller stuff too. Okay, grammar. I'm usually pretty good. I don't point out every error, but I do point out a bunch of them. So yeah, I expect those to be fixed, especially when I've already pointed them out to you. Also, APA format. APA format should not be difficult because the entire week 3 lecture was devoted to APA. Okay, I walked through the process of how to set up the paper, how to create in-text citations, how to create references. So if you watch that video, you should be fine. And if videos aren't your thing, you have projectapa.info that I featured during the lecture several times. You have the McGraw-Hill readings on APA, which are terrific, by the way. I love those readings. I wish more students would go back to them if they prefer that form for APA. You always have the samples, okay? This week for the essay assignments, you have 2 sample essays, one on the GPAD, one on the Diet Coke ad we looked at in week 1. So you could also just learn APA by looking at a finished product and seeing what you need to do. Okay, so that's the final task. So we're talking about peer review and revision. There's a short reflection that needs to be written. I'm not going to talk about this much because I'll send out yet another announcement where I'll make the reflection optional, awarding bonus points to people who want to do it, but making it optional. I understand with the chaos of the hurricane and the Labor Day interruption and me falling behind with grading and taking longer than it should have, that yeah, I'm not going to put a pile of final activities on your doorstep for you to do. So the reflection, which is already, it's not graded. So yeah, if it's ungraded, I'm not going to make it a firm requirement. I'll just offer a 5-point bonus to whoever does it. Okay. And the reflection, in the instructions for the reflection, there are a series of prompts you have to answer. They ask things like, how did you grow as a writer during the month? Or how confident were you with your writing ability at the beginning of the month versus the end of the month? Personal questions, but related to writing in the class. Okay. So I'm not going to say too much about this because it's optional. And yeah, those prompts, they're contained in the instructions. If you do decide to tackle it, though, by the way, there's the RISE model that we talked about earlier. Oh, and there's the assignment sheet for the revision activity. Oh, no, this is reflection. Here are the prompts. And again, these are contained in the instructions for activity. So here are the prompts. Okay, what were you expecting from an English course? Did it meet your expectation? How confident were you in your abilities? And so on. The focus is on, the class and what you learned. It's not a critique of me. That comes in a separate activity when you get sent a link to evaluate the class and me as the instructor. This is not that. Okay. And if you do decide to use a reflection, it should be an APA format. That should be a breeze because if your essay was already in APA format, you basically could even recycle your essay draft. It just changes the title on the cover page, eliminate the text, but replace it with your reflection. There's no references page, there's no citation, so it's just a matter of following layout. Remember all the things in the week 3 video? Double spacing your text, having a cover page. So yeah, it's just the reflection should be in APA format. But again, if you're doing that for the essay anyway correctly, it should be no problem whatsoever to have the reflection in APA format. Okay, I'm actually going to skip some of these final slides because they're not super important and because I promised that this would be a shorter session and we're already nearing the 1 hour mark. Questions or concerns about either peer review or revision? Actually, let me show you week 4 real quickly to give you a reminder. Week 4 is also a little bit lighter in the sense that you don't have 2 McGraw-Hill activities. You only have 1. Those achieved modules, those are for weeks 1 through 3. Week 4, there's only the Smart Book. And even the Smart Book, it's super short because there are only selections from 2 chapters, not 4 or 5, just 2. So this should be the easiest McGraw-Hill week ever. You read those 2 chapters, you answer those questions, get your 100%. Easy peasy. And the two major activities are peer review, which, as I explained, I don't think it's terribly difficult, right? And revising, which will take time. But again, you're not writing a paper from scratch. You're improving the paper that you're handing in this week. So week 4 by design is a lighter week. But okay, questions, comments? Shamika, Erica, you guys kind of showed up a little bit late, so you'll have to watch the recording to see the first half, the stuff that you missed. But if you have questions, go ahead and ask them now. If you're completely clear on what we discussed and you don't have questions, you're allowed to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. And I thank you very, very much for attending, okay? Honestly. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you do have. I'll hang out for a few minutes to answer questions that people might have. Nicholas says, I don't really have any other than if I'm showing any improvement from a professional standpoint. I feel like I'm not progressing fast enough. Yeah, that's a common feeling because we only have 1 month. I can say honestly that just about well, maybe not every single person. Some people are completely MIA, but no, I see the progress. And if anybody feels like there's a backward step because maybe one grade was lower than the other, first always focus on your overall grade. Some people panic because they get a B or a C, but if their overall grade is a 90, that means you're getting an A. And if it's an 88 or an 89, that means you're knocking on the door of an A. That just means that you have to apply the feedback that you received and apply it to the next assignment. The course is specifically set up so that no single grade can torpedo your progress in this class. In extreme situations, I had a student who failed the essay draft and still earned an A in the class. That's a rare exception. But yeah, in an ideal world, I wish everybody would focus more on feedback and just applying feedback and making improvements, which I think your question is about, Nicholas. I don't think it's about grades at all. But I know some people watch this will be thinking more in terms of grades, so that's why I address it. Also, writing is a lifelong task. It really is. It never ends in terms of improving learning. Writing is also not a born skill. Anybody can improve. I mean that. I've seen cases of people who, they weren't very good writers, and they turned out to be outstanding writers. But it does take time. Surrounding yourself with reading, the more you read, the more that the rules of writing and grammar just soak into you. I didn't read from studying grammar books. I learned probably the most from reading. Everybody I think is making progress this month. But the progress will hopefully continue if you care very much about writing. Hopefully your interest in writing does not end just because English class is over. Okay, good question. Any other questions? Again, I'll hang out for a little bit in case Eric or Nicholas have anything they want to talk about. And again, if there isn't, you're free to go. I'm not kicking you out of the room, but I'm saying you don't have to hang around. As a matter of fact, unless I see a question pop up within the next few seconds, I'm going to stop the recording because the people watching probably aren't going to stay tuned if people ask questions. And I like to keep those in the recording because lots of times they apply to what other people might be thinking as well. But because they're slowing down, I will wish the people who are watching this who didn't attend a big thank you for watching the lecture, and I'm going to stop the recording now.